the introduction's not going to be as long as last time for Starflight because we are in the middle of a game. But I thought I was going to play this again. So normally I do streams on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and last Friday I played Starflight and spent a lot of time talking about Starflight. Actually, uh, it's an Electronic Arts game by Binary Systems. It's actually a first game by a lot of the people who worked on it. And it's one that wound up being very influential in terms of a lot of other games that came afterwards, and particularly games that were So Starflight was absolutely a success. But even games that today we would consider to be successful and very influential in their own right are ones that have been inspired by it. So I spent quite a bit of time talking about Mass Effect, but I also know Star Control was inspired by Starflight. I believe actually it's a little more complicated than that because I believe someone who worked on Star Control actually also did a little bit of work on Starflight as well. And well, Elite was sort of separate. I think also Elite is kind of the other game that's sort of considered alongside Starflight. I believe actually Elite might have predated it, but I don't think they were. I don't know if there was any sort of inspiration or reference there. But on top of that, Dwarf Fortress is another one. So you do see people refer to Star Control a lot. One thing actually that surprises me a little bit is that I've heard more people refer to Star Control than I've heard them refer to Starflight. Whereas Star Control was not something I'd heard of until there was that lawsuit with, what's the company called? They published Off-World Trading Company. I think it's Stardock. In any case, just a kind of a gap in my own understanding of gaming history. But I really wanted to share this one because I was looking for an excuse to play Starflight. But on top of that, I was playing a little bit of No Man's Sky, and I've just kind of been reading up a little bit on procedural generation lately. And there's just something very interesting about looking at this game and appreciating its influence, but maybe not seeing how often this is referred to as I suppose when I think about the influence that this game has had and the fact that these are all references that are out in the open for anyone to find, the fact that Starflight doesn't seem to be referenced as often as some of these other points of inspiration was a big reason for me wanting to sort of play it and run forward. My preference would definitely be to try the Genesis version, which seems to have just this nice sort of visual polish to it. But the version that was available to me was the one that's on GOG, and I believe you can also buy it on the EA Origin store. However, it is not included as part of the EA Play subscription, which is a shame because I actually think that would be a good fit. You could play like the Wing Commander games in there and such. But I had a good time with it. I played it for a really long time on Friday, so I can't give any promises in terms of the amount of time that I'll spend playing tonight. But I definitely wanted to take a little more time to look at the game and just sort of see if we can see a little bit more of what it has to offer. All right, I'm just looking for my code program. There's actually, on the odd chance that some of you wind up playing this on GOG, hey, Irrepressible, you have never heard of this game. Well, that's one of the big reasons why I want to play this. So were you here when I was talking about some of the games that that have been influenced and inspired by this. I don't know if I'll be here for a very long time, but I'm happy to go over it because I think this is one of the really reward things. This is ancient copyright protection. Yeah, well, actually, so I was gonna offer off the top. Oh yeah, no worries, irrepressible. I won't spend a big long time talking about it, but it is actually something that I quite literally just said. And rather than sort of make people go back through videos to see what's being said, it's not that difficult for me to cover it. However, I want to sort of pause the game for a second here, just to give a little bit of a tip in terms of how to interact with this thing. There we go. If you are playing the GOG version like me, because I actually found this hard. So back when I was really into GOG, I actually liked their way of doing things, and I don't know if it's changed or I'm just sort of realizing a few of the limitations. But yeah, I mean this is definitely an old game. I mean, I always like kind of I was kind of like messing with some of the people I know, either who make games or watch games, or like music that they like. I'll always refer to it as like oldies or something along those lines. But yeah, this is undeniably an old game. Um, I mean, I think we're at the point now where people who are getting into game design are not being inspired by what I think people would kind of consider to be classic gaming. But these are people who are going to be inspired by gaming when it is sort of a very large and I don't know, respectable, for lack of a better term, kind of entertain, like something that you would sort of compete with motion pictures, let's say. Whereas, of course, if your inspirations are things like Mario or Myst or Wing Commander, let's say, um, it's not to say that games weren't big business, but they're maybe not the sort of it's rivaling Hollywood sort of entertainment thing. Whereas here, like League of Legends is as much a risk to Netflix as Apple TV Plus or Amazon Prime is. Like it's just a question in terms of how people are spending their free time. But on the odd chance that any of you wind up playing this game or have this game on the platform which I have, which is GOG, there's a couple things that I learned that make this a little tricky to work with. I think if you have the game open and then you go to use the code generator in the launcher, I believe having one or the other open will prevent the other from being open through the launcher. I think it basically just thinks the game is already open and it doesn't want to create open a second program. So for my part, what I do is I'll load Starflight and then I'll just go under the options menu, hit Manage Installation, Show Folder, and then I'll manually open the stuff that I want in that folder. So that'll include the manual and the map, which I've got here. And then there's a program called Starflight Codes by GOG .exe to give you all an idea of what the actual code looked like. You'd get a little security access code wheel to mess around with, but in the digital version of the game, there's just a program which will sort all that out for you. But yeah, irrepressible. I didn't want to spend. I won't spend too much time talking about this. But in terms of one of the reasons why I'm actually streaming this is because of the influence that it has had on games. And I talked about this on the previous stream. One thing that I find really interesting is how sometimes there can be very important influences on major either cultural events or just things that have been massively successful by any measure. So I'm specifically thinking of Star Wars here. And Star Wars, obviously it has made George Lucas very wealthy. It's something that, of course, has now been acquired by Disney. And what I find really interesting is that George Lucas has been very open about his influences as a filmmaker. And particularly, you'll see the influence is definitely a lot closer when you look at some of his earlier work. But he was very strongly influenced by a Canadian filmmaker who worked for the National Film Board called Arthur Lipsett. And Arthur Lipsett would do these experimental, but I think still today, very interesting short films that the best ones would be either Very Nice, or 2187. There's a couple, or 2187. There's a couple of other good ones, but I think those are the two that I'd really highlight. And the kinds of people who noticed these works go so far as Stanley Kubrick. So if you've ever watched the trailer for Doctor Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, that was actually a so I believe Kubrick originally wanted to get Lipsett to edit that trailer. I don't think Lipsett took the job, and Kubrick obviously made a very good trailer and one that you can sort of see the influence there. But on top of that, you've got George Lucas. I mean, to a certain extent, I think it would not be unfair to say that George Lucas really kind of wanted to ape Lipsett in a lot of his student work. THX 1138 4EB, his student film, very much carries sort of the stamp of that influence. And of course, some of his other things like American Graffiti and Star Wars maybe have a little bit less of that influence. But again, the thing here is that I'm not really trying to just drag out some weird influence or that, right? You know how sometimes, I don't want to like knock English class because I actually think there's some value in sometimes doing this, but like sometimes you feel like when you're reading a poem in English class, like it feels like the teacher is just really trying to drag out this meaning that may or may not actually be there, and part of the game just seems to be like you're given this puzzle to work with, and you just kind of need to poke it the right way, or you need to figure out the right little combination to open it up, and then you get the prize. There can be a type of film criticism or game criticism like that where you will kind of take this thing which may or may not be related to the underlying product, and you make that connection, and then you just kind of run off with it. And again, there can definitely be some value in that, but in this case here, it's not that complicated. Lucas has not made it a secret that he had a great admiration for Arthur Lipsett and very much wanted to do that sort of thing as a filmmaker. But then, even then, despite the fact that Star Wars is massively successful and, definitely had a really big job in shaping not just filmmaking, but I'd go so far as to say the culture, right? Because somebody like Chris Roberts then sits down and watches Star Wars and gets really inspired by the space dogfights and winds up making a game like Wing Commander. Of course, he's now on to Star Citizen. But, in these cases here, there's definitely a lot. I don't know. It's funny to just know that there are these influences which the filmmaker has not gone out of because there's definitely people who will try and suppress either people who have helped them or influences that they've had. But some of these ones that are just like out in the open, you can suddenly discover, oh, hey, there's actually, you can kind of trace a little bit of a lineage here. And so in the case of Starflight, that is sort of my, I guess for lack of a better term, my Arthur Lipsett of gaming. So Casey Hudson, director on Mass Effect, went so far as a tweet to say Starflight was a key inspiration for the Mass Effect series. I also talked about, I hear in terms of old game, usually in conversations about Starflight, I will often hear references to a game called Star Control, which I've not played, but does seem to be a very influential one, and one that sort of later inspired other science fiction games. And again, that was one where I believe if they didn't work on it, then at least there was someone who sort of consulted with binary systems when making Starflight, and they would go on to do Star Control. And then Dwarf Fortress. So there are some procedurally generated creatures in this game, and apparently the Forgotten Beasts were inspired by this game as well. And so in this case here, you will see a lot of a lot of games that we would consider to be, modern major influences, right? Like you can definitely see that there's going to, if there isn't already, there's definitely going to be a generation of people who got into gaming and want to create experiences for an audience because of what they felt when they were playing Mass Effect. Dwarf Fortress is obviously one that has inspired a lot of people to go down some interesting directions in game development. And of course, it's going to be getting its Steam release at some point in the future. And then maybe one last reference that I'll make here is that Orson Scott Card, I've actually found the quote here. Starflight is the first science fiction computer game that actually gives you something to experience, something of the experience of roaming through the galaxy. I found this game obsessively fascinating, and the graphics and player interface are superb. He called it the Star Wars of science fiction games, brilliantly designed and programmed, the standard against which all other space exploration games must be measured. That actually, I just got those quotes from the Wikipedia article, so I updated it to make sure it said that. But the thing that's also so insane about this, so they called it fractal generation, but this is a game which they used, math basically to generate 800 worlds. At least in the manual, they claim that they had not visited all 800 worlds by the time that manual was published. And obviously, this type of gaming has sort of been rediscovered, very much so in the indie space, but even for larger games now like No Man's Sky, obviously that type of generation allowed such a small team to create a very broad experience. But what is also so interesting and infuriating about this game is that Binary Systems were 5 people, most of whom had never made a game before. So like the lead designer on this game had not made a video game before Starflight. So it's a very interesting little relic, and it was one that I wanted to share. And for the reasons, the thing is, if you're going to play a retro game, you're going to run into people who have some very heavy nostalgia for these games. And I can't have that, right? I was not really around for Starflight. But I can't talk about what it was like to play the game at the time. I'm playing Starflight in 2022. But there are reasons why I find a game like this interesting. And I think there are reasons why people who like modern games should find this kind of game interesting. And I really enjoyed playing it on Friday, so this has been my excuse to play a little bit more. But it does seem that time keeps going by, so that's why I spent some time on this. There we go. So why I spent some time on the menu, just so I could move into other topics. Now, with that in mind, let's please keep in mind this game's, was it 1986 we said? 1989? Let me just double check. Was released in 1986. Yeah, so definitely, I'd say based on what I know for demographics, it's as old as or older than most people who watch the channel, I think. And if you're not in that category, don't worry. It almost seems kind of like a bimodal distribution, I've noticed. But and again, Twitch doesn't give me that data. YouTube does, and YouTube may or may not have accurate information on this. But yeah, I ended last Friday's stream trying to decide what to do with all the money that I had earned. So. There's a few things there's definitely a few little story events that kind of popped up. We have a reasonably good idea about where we want to go next. But what I want to do right now is sort of consider what I'm doing with all of my wealth. And the big question was how many sort of defensive sort of technologies and whatnot do I want to have on my ship. So one thing that I sort of thought about this a little bit. First thing I'm going to do is sell my engine. So that's class 1 out. And in this case, I'm going to go all the way for the class 5 engine. And I'm actually going to put a little check mark beside that. Now, I have 2 options available to me. So to give the exception, thank you very much. 50 months of subscriptions, good Lord. And this is an offcast. This is supposed to be like something secret that nobody really ran into. Thank you very much, The Exception. You gave my secret stream a nice little bonus. I will just warn you all, like this isn't like this was an excuse for me because I wanted to play Starflight. So I don't like normally sit down and like do 3 hours and commentate when I play games on my own. So just a heads up, like this may not quite be the same as what you're used to. I'll do my best to like, put on a good show and all that, but I'm keeping the expectations low for myself. And you probably should too. Okay. So basically, what I decided was this. I really like the idea that you can earn interest as you explore in this game. And I'm going to start sort of adding in layers to the ship. So I don't necessarily want to add offensive capabilities because I'm not planning on getting into fights. Now, there may be an argument for adding defensive capabilities, but then the question is like, okay, am I willing to give up 125,000 monetary units for protection? Or am I willing to give up the 25,000 for armor? Armor will make me slower. Or do I just rely on having the fastest ship I possibly can, mine as much as I can, and, we just buy the shielding in addition to maybe one weapon next time around. So essentially what I'm trying to do here is I'm saying is like, I'm going to defer the purchase of defensive and offensive capabilities in order to try and just kind of make it go a little bit further. So a great example of this would be also my training, right? If I had not invested the training in my crew earlier, that would have been money in the bank that was earning me interest. And so I'm going to try and think a little bit more business-like as far as running this ship. And in this case here, I'm sort of saying I will get fuel efficiency. I will get the ability to extract resources. But in this case here, I'm making a conscious decision to avoid conflict. And that's definitely going to shape the interactions we have with aliens. If we do wind up running into aliens, I'm going to be as nice as I possibly can to them. So in any case, there is the purchase that we made. Just to give you an idea of this game's age, when I go to the bank, the interest rate is 12%. So definitely something that reflects a 1980s sort of view of the world. But yeah, so you'll notice like the interest that I've been getting over time hasn't been too exciting. But in this particular case here, I suspect because I've got over 100,000 in the bank and because I'm probably going to be going pretty far out, we'll probably earn a little bit more on our way out. And with that in mind, I'm probably going to buy up a little more Endurium. So I noticed that the prices are creeping up a bit. So I was originally going to say, well, maybe about 30, but I think I'm actually going to go up to 40. So that's 11.1. So the trick for this should be that we want to have, enough Endurium to sort of head out to the system that we want to check out, mine what we need, and, like as the Endurium gets sort of consumed, that frees up the space in our ship. I am going a little overweight in terms of Endurium right now, but that's just also partly due to the fact that the price does seem to be going up over time. And so I want to prepare for that eventuality. One last consideration that I'm just going to bring up is where we're heading. So we want to go to Colony Control. This is an archived message that we found earlier. Let me just bring up the Starflight map. And so we are here. Colony Control is 118, 146. So 118... Oof, yeah, that's really far away. So this system right here. So yeah, I may actually wind up in some scary situations. But we're going to go for it. And basically we saw a message that said there was something on the fourth planet. But this is definitely going to be a really far this is going to be the furthest that we've gone out into space. So ship computer activated. Pre-launch procedures complete. Standing by to initiate launch. Oh, right. Sorry. It's the captain that says we can launch. The control scheme to this game is pleasantly surprising. It's basically just the arrow keys. I usually use enter. Every once in a while, it'll ask you to press the space bar, but it is very simple control scheme, which is not something I'm used to when it comes to games or to old games. Ready to launch. Confirm. Request security code for I think it's Spenta, Tesseract, Ulek. Okay. Nope. Sputa. All right. And the code is 2156. Verifying security code. Yes. Are you sure? Better double check. Man, the game really likes messing with me on this. I wonder if we're going to run into the space police again. All right, behold the majesty of space. So we're basically going to be heading, so it's not exactly north, it's upspin, I believe, but it's easier to say north. But I don't really have anything I want to check in the system here. I'm really more interested in heading out to space. So we are heading towards 118, 146. And it doesn't hurt to keep an eye on the... So I think at 120, I'm going to head left. Oh yeah, we've got plenty of fuel for this. Okay, so now we're going to head to 118. This is just kind of taking advantage of the map to try and avoid anything that... Oh! Motion detected at 6 minus 2... I'm not sure what to do with that. Oh, there we go. Scanners indicate unidentified object. Receiving. Most harmonious greetings. It is the illustrious Veloxi. Please now, the identifying, I think so. Communications. Respond. Friendly. Hello, we come in peace from the planet Arth. The you aliens trespassing in ours the space. Most gracious grossness of August Queen, perhaps forgiving if you are pay tribute of 3 Arth energy crystals right away. By Jove, agreeing? No. Communications have been terminated. Oh, we may be in trouble. They've armed their weapons. Run for your lives! Oh god, this is really hard. I'm trying to get out of here. So I'm pretty sure we can outrun them. But yeah, so the game doesn't pause while we're trying to escape. But I probably should have just paid them off. Okay, we gotta get to 146. Given the fact that it says there's motion in the area, I'm actually gonna wait till we're in a system before I start doing things like ship repairs. There we go. Okay, so for starters, let's go. Oh god. Engineer, damage. Okay, so definitely start repairing the engines. And for the doctor, let's see. So who's hurt? So Captain Ariella is fine. Cheese is fine. Olaf is fine. Tree Cicero is fine. And Sin is fine. Okay, great. So let's get the status. Hey, Valiant. They did technically, but I just named the follow-up character. I named the follow-up character the same name. Okay. So far we're not using uh-oh. Oh god. Ah! Okay, so I think I'm just gonna rush to the first planet I can find. Okay. So hopefully they can't chase after me in here. But yeah, this definitely makes it challenging for me to talk and play. So let's go back to repairs. Definitely repairing sensors next. Okay, so one of the things that okay, that was easy. One of the things that we're trying to do is find worlds that we can colonize. So we are. I'm still following through on that goal. Let's start with the sensors. So minerals here, no atmosphere. So this is already out as a candidate. But let's just take a quick look at the other features. So light on the gravity, but I believe it would still be acceptable. No atmosphere, and it's too hot. So the only thing that this is really going to be good for us is potentially it'll be useful for the minerals. So that's why we're going to land. But this is really just a chance for me to, escape the bad guys at this point. I probably should be going to the fourth planet right away, but in this case, we're probably going to be running away rather quickly. So we'll see what we can find here and move on. Now, because we were talking about the influence that this game had in that, it's worth remembering that these worlds are procedurally generated. And the planet that you're seeing here is, so you've got the map, and like the planets will reflect the world that's actually generated, as will, let me select the site. When we descend, we are actually going to fly into this thing, and they're actually doing the projections to make this all work, which I think is kind of cool. Obviously, nowadays this is very, very primitive, but to a certain extent, right? 800 worlds, all of which get this treatment in a game that is measured in terms of kilobytes. That I think is a pretty cool little accomplishment. Not a little accomplishment, a cool accomplishment. And yes, TIE Fighter is really fun. I want to play more of Star Wars Squadrons, but I haven't put a lot of time into it. Okay, it doesn't say any terrible weather right now. I'm going to take a quick look and see. Okay, so up north there is something on the ground. Plutonium. And we really don't know what else. So in this case, I'm just going to keep going north until I either run out of fuel or we have other opportunities. And we'll do the same with the other directions. The lower I'm going, the less likely I'm going to find minerals. But I don't think it's gonna hurt to give this a shot. So every once in a while, the game will say that it's scanning the territory. That basically is telling me that it's kind of generating the next batch of goodies. Oh, silver, nothing to complain about there. Okay, at 60%, I think I'm gonna head back to the ship. Maybe can get by. Not really able to go that far west, but it always feels a little bad to kind of leave some energy just lying on the table like that. But we've learned that it is very costly to lose the terrain vehicles, so I've learned my lesson. Okay, so we're going to disembark and do the same thing again. Now, we were talking about, apologies to those of you who were here on Friday. I'm going to be repeating myself a little bit here, but this is definitely to me, one of the bigger indicators of a case where Mass Effect was trying to capture some of the experience of Starflight. So you can definitely do a mapping from this to the Mako in the first game, but also some of the different things that they tried in terms of the various forms of planet exploration, both in terms of the Mass Effect 2 system, but also maybe some of the things that they tried and ultimately didn't succeed at when developing Andromeda. And to me, I think the attempting and not necessarily succeeding is just as interesting, at least from a historical point of view. Obviously, I got to admit, I like playing stuff where the ambitions are successfully implemented. Clearly, I guess the example I would give you would be if XCOM, right, was a very ambitious turn-based strategy game that sort of ultimately failed to deliver on its promise. I'd like to think that I would appreciate something trying to do something new, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to imagine that I would, necessarily. I'm gonna get a little greedy here and try the. You know what? I'm gonna make a special trip for those. But yeah, I'd like to think that I would sort of find some enjoyment out of trying something like that. But obviously, we enjoy games that are fun to play more than we like, interesting experiments that we can kind of appreciate what they were trying to do, but maybe ultimately it didn't live up to the initial promise. But again, in terms of just thinking about the influences on the games that I've enjoyed, and again, I don't mean to say that Andromeda was a failure. I'm not in a position to say that. I've never played the game. I know financially it was quite successful, but obviously they also withdrew they withdrew the effort to do sort of post-release support, which sort of indicates a diminished enthusiasm for the overall project. But yeah, again, just from the perspective of thinking about the things that have sort of helped shape experiences that I've really enjoyed, being able to know that Andromeda tried to do something that was inspired by Starflight. I would actually go so far as to argue what I was reading in the Kotaku article about the kind of the direction that Andromeda tried to go and ultimately abandoned. To me, it really felt like it was the attempt to capture that one thing that they'd gotten close to but never quite delivered on from that original inspiration. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's just one of these things that's very convenient to build as a narrative. But I can't know the contents of the head of the people who were working on it. But I wouldn't be surprised if I found out that's what if that was the case, let's say. So you love how TIE Fighter grows beyond what X-Wing was by adding point-and-click style dialogue sequences in between the missions. It adds an extra sense of there being a world outside your ship's cockpits, and it gives room for characterization that supports the intrigue, etc. Yeah, I mean, especially with the... I don't know if this was something that was in the base game or added as an expansion or what have you, but I seem to recall there was an Emperor's sort of secret society or secret group where they would be giving you orders, potentially orders that contradicted sort of the imperial command. And there's just something obviously really interesting about this idea of sort of a secret army within the empire that is only answerable to the emperor. And I think that's just a really, really interesting idea. I would, obviously that sort of stuff seems to have, from what I understand, the acquisition, I should probably head back to the ship. But I am gonna fly up and then fly back down. So we're gonna launch and then we're gonna land again. But yeah, being able to just kind of get, I don't know, more Star Wars and just kind of explore some interesting, interesting ideas and offshoots. To me, like that, I think that's a big appeal of those kind of those older Star Wars games. Like, I never saw Rogue One, but I know to a certain extent, before Rogue One, the original Dark Forces game, like not the Jedi Knight one, but the one that looked closer to Doom, told the story of how the Death Star plans were obtained, and you play the character who steals them, basically. Which, it is interesting, right? Like, to a certain extent, I mean, this is maybe something that we're losing when fans become a little more, I don't know, militant, for lack of a better term, in terms of like what's canon and not. Like, you can I guess I kind of like it if we could get back to a point where people can have a world that they like, and they don't have to sit down and think about some massive series Bible. Instead, they just sort of feel, hey, this is a cool idea. Let's run with this and see what happens. And then, I think one thing that does sometimes make these worlds work is the coherence. Don't get me wrong with that. I don't think it should, I don't want people to be, I don't think people who want to tell these stories necessarily want to just turn around and say, okay, you know what, I'll just phone this one in. We won't worry about the background. But I kind of feel to a certain extent that if people feel like everything that they do is going to be scrutinized against some, database of, oh, well, this person does this, how dare you write it some other way. I just think in general there's going to be less creativity, or at the very least the creativity that is the type of creativity that we'll see will be trying to navigate those kind of arbitrary rules as opposed to telling interesting and compelling stories in a setting. Sorry, I just want to take a quick... it also does a bit more in the way of having objectives shift mission than X-Wing. I don't believe I've ever played X-Wing. Storytelling that happens during the gameplay is something that is often missing from games with a mission structure. It's easy to pack that stuff into briefings and then make the gameplay bits entirely mechanical. Yeah, no, I agree. In fact, I think probably some of the most memorable moments during sort of space flight simulators have usually been times where it's like, okay, so we thought it was a routine mission, but then dot dot dot, and something really exciting or something really difficult happens, and I talk about how I got around it. That's usually very exciting. I mean, obviously, I suspect to a certain extent nowadays, because everything has got a website and sort of a walkthrough, and people tend to write this sort of stuff out. It's maybe a bit easier for people to have that spoiled, for lack of a better term, or at the very least, they're going to read about it and they're going to know going in that there's a twist, and so the impact is a little bit less. But I mean, to that extent, that's people just opting into being surprised or not. I don't know if we want to completely get rid of that approach, just because a subset of the players are choosing not to experience it that way. I may have to refill my tea in a little bit, but let's see if we can go through. I keep hearing about Free Space. I don't know if there's a way to play it, but it definitely feels like that's one that people really admire in terms of that type of. I mean, I really like Rebel Galaxy Outlaw. That's where the context where I heard it a lot. But unfortunately, with that one, I think they were working on some DLC, and I don't think Double Damage is completely wrapped up, but I think basically they're sort of on maintenance mode. I think there's an effort to try and get some modding tools released. But it definitely feels like, I know Travis Baldry is basically doing audiobooks now. And from what I understand, people have actually been quite unkind as far as, treating the developers behind that game, and, the idea of the game being abandoned. And I'd love to have more Rebel Galaxy. I think it's a really good series. But, if the developers decide that it's not worth it for them, even just in terms of professional satisfaction, they're not under an obligation to dedicate their life to creating entertainment products for me. And I do kind of wish, I feel like I don't see how a developer who's kind of on the fence about doing DLC for a game is somehow going to be convinced to do it when a bunch of people who call themselves fans are yelling at them for not delivering. So, I don't know. GOG ships Free Space too? Okay, interesting. I should definitely check that out. Okay. Sorry, I'm really thirsty. Let's try going south. I never really explored that before. So this is a considerably more interesting run, just because I know I'm being hunted. So, we kind of got shaken down for Endurium, and I didn't really want to give it up. I know we've lost armor, so I'm going to need to pay to get that, get that restored. But yeah, at this point here, the whole point of this trip was to spend a bit of Endurium to kind of go out kind of far, find what felt like sort of a story objective, but then this is quite costly energy-wise. Okay, I think we should head back to the ship before I get to... Oh. This may not end well. But yeah, I definitely wanted to get a return. But of course, now we've got this dimension. I sort of said, okay, I'm willingly choosing to go short on my my defensive systems, my offensive systems. But of course, I do so now, knowing that decision is it has me on the run. Okay. So I don't think I have that much more I want to do with this world. We're just going to move to the second one and hope. Oops. Yeah, so it did say that there was. Ah! Pull over. This is the Interstellar Corporate Police. You are under arrest. Drop all shields and disarm all weapons. You are in violation of intergalactic software theft law. Do not attempt to resist. This is the captain. This is Captain S.O. Ariella of a spaceship ISS This Thing On. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. Okay, well, so much for that. It's the space fuzz. That's a great. You know what, man? We gotta. Okay, this is your. I believe you've just got your next project after Bone Sweeper Valiant Cheese. We now we really need a game called Space Fuzz in the world. I don't even care what it is. I just really want a game with that name. Okay, so basically this is, I don't know if this comes from the game saying is like, are you sure it's this number? Or if this is just a normal thing, but this is basically making sure that I'm assuming what it's doing is making sure that I'm not just dodging home, so I don't need to put in the password, but our apologies, Captain. There's been some kind of mistake. You can go. Have a safe voyage. Could you please kill those Veloxi that are coming after me while you're at it? Okay, so definitely based on the sensor readings, they're still coming after us. I believe pink means this is a gas giant, so we're probably going to have an easier time with these. Space Fuzz versus the Intergalactic Popo coming 2023. Okay. So as always, we'll let the science officer do their thing. Nitrogen, oxygen, atmosphere, water in the hydrosphere, chromium, titanium, and gold. So on paper, this looks like it's a really attractive planet. And then we do the analysis. So it's gas giant, 16 Gs, very thick atmospheric density, tropical to inferno temperature, and very violent global weather. So there's no way we're going to be able to land on this. We'll just move on. Now, the fourth planet is the one that is our sort of our target, but that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Okay, well, that's definitely not a gas giant. Methane, ammonia, argon, ammonia compounds. 12G. We can't land on this. So it's the fourth planet at 118, 146. Let me just double check the manual here. I'm pretty sure anything greater than 8 kills us. And so far as I can tell, there's no way to do multiple saves. So I don't exactly want to like throw the run on this detail. Oh man. Okay. So first of all, I made a mistake in terms of colonization candidates, and it's just because I wrote. So it has to be less than 2 Gs, not 3. And I wrote the weirdest 2 I've ever written in my life. So 0.7 to 1.3 is optimal. Yeah, so gravity greater than 8 will kill me. Um, I don't know where that is in the manual here. But when I took a look at my notes, so I guess the thing that's a little funny here is that the note that I got, I don't know the exact, I don't know the exact details, but basically there's colony control. There was a system at 118, 146. It said the fourth planet, and at 16 south, 20 west, there was something for me to check out. Now, if I try to land on this planet, I'm dead. So I'm not going to do that. But it makes me wonder what I'm supposed to do with that hint. There's actually, I'm going to just double check one thing really quick. I don't normally like checking out walkthroughs on this, but I want to see if I can maybe find a specific note to this planet specifically. So I'm just doing a search for 118, 146, fourth planet, Starflight. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so it says planetary ruin, message at 123. Okay, so actually apparently a lot of this is fixed into place. So to colony control at 16 south, 20 west, planet 4, system 118, 146. Now, for some reason, it seems to indicate that you can actually land on this and find a message. But I am absolutely not risking my I'm not risking my ship on this thing. I will gladly just go and try and find another quest to do than than land on something that the game has told me I can't. So basically just heading to the outermost planet here. Now, if we don't find anything, it's been a bit of a bust of a journey, but well, so it's got life on it. It's got some minerals, oxygen in the atmosphere. It does have water. Promethium and gold are reasonably valuable. So it's a planet, rock surface, gravity. Atmosphere could be better. Temperature is manageable. Okay, so it's not an ideal candidate at all, but just comparing it to our usual parameters. So the temperature needs to be temperate or tropical. So in this case, there's some colder parts, but it's survivable for sure. Gravity needs to be less than 2. Ideal is within the bounds of 0.7 to 1.3, so we're good there. Atmosphere has to have oxygen. We already saw that. It needs to at least have water, which we know it does. Atmosphere activity can be none, calm, or moderate. So, global weather could be a little bit better, but manageable. Basically, the atmosphere has to exist, which, again, it'd be nice if we had more, but I'll live with this. So we will log the planet. What do we want to call it, though? Does chat have any recommendations for a planet name? Or I think I've got a few that I can kick around if I want. So I'm just taking a second. Keen to hear mine. Okay. I was thinking we're hiding from the Veloxi, so I was thinking we could like call it something as like a hideout from them. But all right. Novell Oxhaven. There we go. So the first thing I'm going to try here is to treat this like I'm going to treat this like this is the planet that the ruin was on. So 16 south, 20 west. So let's just see what we find here first, and then afterwards we can try we can try to mine elsewhere. Nope, an electrical storm. So that's half of Sin's health that we just lost there. Dr. Sin, treat thyself. Nope. FG's got injured. My God, what's going on here? So again, I'd love to read a little bit more about these creatures, but I know what I'm up against here. So okay, so there is a message here. Intelligence communication. Ship was attacked by the Gazatroid. All crew were killed, and the new cloaking device was stolen. A probe was able to track their ship's tachyon trail to the system 6866. Other than that, we don't ... Okay. So cloaking at that says to me that this is going to be hostile. So we will record it, and we'll pick up the dodecahedron. And is there anything for us to pick up? I mean, there might be life, but for now, I'm going to try and claim what I can. Oh, there's another ruin. So I was originally going to go for the life forms, but let's... All right, looks like there's nothing in there. I think I might just try moving on top of it to make sure, but yeah. It is definitely interesting that not every ruin contains something, because that's what you would normally expect, right? Like not every like, I don't know, if you were to go to like South America and look at Aztec ruins, like sometimes you're just going to see very large piles of stone, which have carvings on them. They'll have things that mattered enough to the people who built them, but it's not going to be Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? You're not going to find fabulous wealth through going into every single old building you find and just taking whatever you can. But I was talking about this. I did like a kind of demo run for myself just to make sure that I wouldn't run into too many problems trying to stream the game. And I had one where I think the first 4 ruins I ran into did not have any. You know what? Most things seem pretty passive here. So I think what I'm going to try and do, I'll show you a little bit about what the descriptions look like. Oh, damn it. We're in an electrical storm. We could lose people here. Huge bilateral creature with a curly... Yeah, no. I think we're just going to run home and hope we do not lose the Eloan. Northwest. But yeah, sorry. Having had this experience where it felt like every time I went and found a ruin, there wasn't anything there. It made me wonder: was this a situation where I was doing something wrong and there was a different way of interacting with ruins that I didn't know about? Okay, Ariel is injured in the thunderstorm. We're just going to hop out and hop back in. Come on. And in this case, it just happened to be that I was kind of unlucky. But when you're first playing a game, and like those were the ruins that were in the home system, so you would have expected that those would be the ones that were fine. I definitely wound up in a situation where I sort of felt like ruins were effectively useless, which I'm sure was not the intention. Okay, let's see if we can make something happen with this one. A huge, graceful bilateral creature with a leathery light orange feathered surface. It has a tiny gnarled head and a tiny acid sac. It appears to be moving. And if we scan... Height 5 meters, 54 centimeters tall. It is an omnivore, aggression analog bobcat, intelligence analog fox. Add it to the space zoo. So again, I'd love to show. Don't acid sack shame. I'd love to actually spend more time talking about these procedurally generated, worlds and the species on them, because I actually think this is a really cool feature. But this actually, unsuccessful. It's probably going to be annoyed at us now. We can try and stun it, but stunning can sometimes kill these things. So there we go. Hopefully we hazard pay. But I think this is not a bad example. Like, this is why I don't necessarily want to be completely uncritical of classic games. I understand some people are uncomfortable with the idea of saying that a game is aged poorly, but this is one example here where Starflight actually did something very interesting, in my opinion, and something that has obviously inspired later games, right? We were talking about Dwarf Fortress. But in this particular case here, I've not really been able to appreciate it because of the other things that the game does, and because the world sort of moves on at a pace that I'm not able to, at a faster pace than I'm able to sort of read in the detail. I just simply don't have the time to be able to look at all of the details. We have successfully abducted aliens. I always feel like it makes more sense to say that context or common sensibilities have changed rather than the work has changed. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I think it's the specific conversation I'm thinking of, and it's a streamer that I quite like. I watch them fairly regularly. I completely get where they're coming from, and I think that's essentially what they're. I think that's the point that they're trying to make as well, and I don't necessarily disagree with the sentiment. But of course, in that particular case, what they were doing was definitely having a much greater objection to, um, like I felt like they were really hammering on the semantics of what the person was saying, and it's like, well, the proposition is in front of you, and we can try and engage um, with what someone likely meant, which is obviously referring to modern sensibilities and such. Or we can really hammer down on this straw man, like I'm pretty sure, basically, I guess the biggest thing I can say, I was kind of sitting, and I didn't want to say this in the conversation because like it was getting a little heated with someone else in the chat, and it was like, there's a certain side of me that says like, do we really need to spend this much time assuming that people are saying that the actual bits in games are changing over time? Because I don't really think anyone believes this. Anybody who does believe it isn't really worth engaging with if they're going to be insistent on the point. And my simple case is, I actually think it's totally fine to say, right? This was the first time we tried something and it didn't work very well, but it didn't stop this from being an enjoyable game. And isn't it such a good thing that somebody tried even an imperfect implementation that was later improved so that we can enjoy all of the conventions we have today? Obviously, if the earlier games weren't made, we would just be making those things we consider mistakes today. So, like I don't want to be too harsh on a game for not fitting sort of my very spoiled modern sensibilities. But I personally don't have a problem saying that something maybe isn't very good, even if I, either with the implicit expectation or the explicit statement that this is in a modern context. So. Oh, fair enough. Yeah, actually, Valentine, I'll be honest with you, I actually haven't heard you go on that rant too much. So, yeah, apologies if that felt like a little bit of I don't know, a saying without really saying. But no, I'm specifically, I mean, I can say the name. I don't think I've said anything too bad about them. But yeah, it was more the semantic. Like, I think the thing that kind of got me about that particular conversation, insofar as it bothered me, because for the most part, it didn't, was that there was so much time spent on the semantics of whether or not the underlying product changed, which I don't think was really in dispute. I think everybody kind of understands how digital reproduction works. And the more interesting conversation in terms of how we regard previous works was largely cast aside in favor of sort of maybe not so much attacking, but definitely talking about a view that wasn't really held. So, I mean, there was one weird, like there was one participant in it that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because I think eventually what happened, I think somebody brought up the Mona Lisa, and I kind of said, it's like, well, look, I don't want to be that guy, but it is actually fair to say that the painting that we have has aged poorly. I'm fairly certain Leonardo was somewhat famous for his technique for capturing this particularly nice shade of azure, which was present in the painting. And obviously the painting that we see now is quite yellowed, and it doesn't, like, we're familiar with looking at this particular object, but it's not the painting that was released at the time. And I mean, the reason why the Mona Lisa has the reputation that it does partly is Leonardo himself. I believe he was the one saying that he thought that was his best work. So to a certain extent, right, that the reputation it has is just sort of based, I guess, partly on a marketing campaign on his part. No, it hasn't actually. There has been a so I got to see an exhibit on an effort to sort of recreate what the original, and the original one's actually very vibrant compared to what we see right now. Now, the thing is that there are many excellent qualities in the painting, and I am not at all equipped to talk about aesthetics. I couldn't necessarily tell you everything about what makes that painting compelling. But, the only point that I would make would be that, it's the object that we are looking at is not definitely not the same object that was released at the time. And that does not diminish its value. That does not diminish its ability. I mean, I suspect to a certain extent, right, insofar as we just care about art's ability to give us an experience or a particular feeling, that's ultimately answered when you are in the presence of the work and what you feel about it, right? And that's a matter of taste. I'm not entirely sure it's my business to tell people what they should or should not feel when they experience things. But yeah, like I'll actually see, just because I'm on this tangent, and I'm also looking for an excuse to refill my my tea. But let me just see. It was actually a really interesting. It was a really interesting exhibit because it also showed some of the. Uh, it was interesting just because it also sort of like they did the, how you can like do the different analysis and the like the like they kind of showed what some of the images beneath looked like. But yeah, I did find a website here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, there we go. So this is, again, I'm taking this from this website, blog.worldmysteries.com. So a this is the painting as it is presently. And I guess the one thing I'd say, it's like it's not exactly monochromatic, but definitely a bit muted in terms of its color. Whereas they're giving this example of the digital color, I suspect a lot of people are going to say, what did they do? They ruined it. But one thing I will say for sure, at least in terms of historical descriptions, this sky is definitely much more in line with what was described. And I also think like there was some, I think there was also another description of sort of the scenery in the background. And again, it was, I think, something of faith. Now, I mean, in fairness, like there's a lot of detail missing in this background, and I've not seen the real painting. From what I understand, the painting's actually quite small. Like I also don't necessarily think this is exactly it, right? Because like there's a lot more detail in the background. But just to give you an idea, right? Like in terms of ballparks, like even if we just kind of pull the reins back a little on this stuff, like there's definitely quite a bit there's quite a bit of difference. Oh, hang on, there's a few more. Oh God. Okay, it's actually got multiple color restorations. I like that it got more brown as humanity polluted the world. Okay. In fairness to this, so it gives a couple of other reproductions. So enhanced in Photoshop by the WM editor. I don't know. Yeah, I'm actually not going to rely too heavily on these. These are definitely not the ones that I was looking at in the exhibit. I wish I could see. I wish I could see the list. Sorry, this is too. I'm spending too much time on this topic. But anyway, so like the point that I just wanted to make is because the Mona Lisa kept getting bandied about in that conversation. I wanted to say, it's like, look, we are talking about this one thing, and it is actually fair to say that in the case of this physical painting, the thing that we are talking about and the thing that is all in our mind when we talk about it is not actually the thing that Da Vinci painted. And you can, you can take or leave the importance of that, but it's maybe not the best analogy that we can draw when it comes to these games. And I mean, again, this does kind of factor into all of the other stuff we were talking about. So there's an earlier point that you'd made, Cheese, where you said you feel like through the language you use, we built a culture where old games end up carrying baggage that maybe they don't. There are lots of things that we view as mistakes through a historical lens that can be read as strengths instead, and hint at a different possibility space set of sensibilities that we don't currently exist within, and that fixating on a misalignment of sensibilities being explicitly mistakes cuts off potentially worthwhile futures. And that's I think that's quite fair to say. I suppose I would say, like, the best example I could think of would be XCOM. So the original XCOM, from what I understand, and I'm talking about the Microprose Julian Gollop game with a dash, I think its inspirations were a game called Sniper and the role-playing game Traveler, neither of which I've played. But I know in the case of Sniper, I believe that introduced the idea of time units. And in the case of XCOM, it is an obviously very influential game. It's a very good game, but there are a few things, like having a member of XCOM walk off the kind of the gangplank and immediately die to alien fire that comes out of nowhere, or the fact that the AI wants to win so badly that it will, when it's outnumbered, like when you have one alien left, it's actually going to run away and hide in the corner of the map. And it just creates this endless chase for this single alien before you can finally leave. Otherwise, you lose the mission. And the fact that the time unit system, while interesting, is actually a little complicated to handle, because sometimes you'll take an action that you don't think costs as much, or maybe you'll like look in the wrong direction and then it's like, okay, now I can't do this one thing I wanted to do. And so you can take a look at a modern interpretation of it, and there is a convention that I actually think is a rather good one and has been adopted more, of sort of the 2 actions you take per turn. There are fewer XCOM units on the team. The aliens do not quite play to win, in the sense of, like, they are not going to run away forever. If they're outnumbered, they'll sort of make their last stand and you'll be able to finish the fight. So I think a productive conversation to be had about that, I think, to the point that you're making, is, I think it's fair to say that Julian Gollop and the rest of the team that worked on the original XCOM made the game that they intended to make. And that one of the things that they wanted to do was to have an AI that tried to optimize for its its situation, which in the case of being outnumbered would mean that it would run away. Now, the matter of taste, of course, is to say, is this very fun? And, I've not spent a lot of time in the original XCOM, but I found it compelling. But I will be the first to admit that there are some things where I was like, you know what, that's not very fun. And I think basically the thing for me is that the ability to call it a mistake in terms of modern sensibilities is very helpful when we're making decisions in terms of being able to talk about the types of games we want to make moving forward. So if I say, when I do this thing in XCOM, enjoyable game, but this thing really bothered me, and I think we can build on that and make something more enjoyable. Implicitly or explicitly, I'm calling it a quote-unquote mistake, but obviously that's in a framing that says, here's how we do something and make it better. And there may be somebody who, later on, goes back to that original source and says, actually, you know what, I think AI should probably play a little bit more like a human, and we should look at should have to hunt it down, and so on and so forth. And in the end, again, you're going to be making your own choices. The only thing for me is just, I'm saying is, like, people have had the advantage of being able to play XCOM for decades, and instead of trying to solve the problems that the original XCOM was trying to solve, they're now trying to solve the problems of a world where XCOM already exists. And assuming that the games that come afterwards aren't completely devoid of innovation, I think it's fair to say that some of those things will be improvements. But of course, creative expression to a large part is going to be about which of those choices and which of those sort of directions, choice sets, whatever you want to call them, people run with. So, again, like I don't really think there's a whole lot of distance in terms of, I guess, the practical side of things for me. But I think part of this also comes from the fact that I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to call something a mistake or maybe something they could have done differently. Like, I don't think someone's immoral because they've not done something perfect. I don't think that's what you think either, but I don't actually see that as being a very negative statement. Although it's nice to kind of present it in context. I'm going to get some tea in a second, but sorry for the long rant. I've only played the new XCOM, and it was interesting that when talking to long-time XCOM players about your experiences, almost everything that you said you felt like the new XCOM would have benefited from doing was stuff that was something that was done in one of the original games. There are some scavenger hunt type games that are interesting, but I think that these days we need a lot of expectation management to guide players into finding that kind of thing acceptable. Yeah, it's like I said, I mean, it's in the end, people are going to go back and see what had come before, and they may, even some things that maybe we would consider, mistakes today. I think going back and raising those questions as to whether or not that was or was not a mistake. Like a decent example might be our idea of atoms, right? Atoms are as old as Democritus. And you've got Epicurus was an atomist. Probably Leucippus' poem is a bit better known for extolling atomism. Now, obviously, atoms as described, in ancient Greece and Rome are nothing like the atoms we know now. There were versions of this where the atoms had like little hooks and, a whole sort of metaphysics about how they wind up sort of colliding with each other. But that idea, was something that did ultimately inspire the scientists who have, built a system that seems to reflect the world as it is very well. And, in that case, like, I don't necessarily think it's wrong to say Democritus was wrong on a number of very important details about how the world works. But there was also something very useful in those writings, and not just limited to the natural sciences, obviously. But it obviously involved a lot of work on people who had come later to think about things in a way that those original thinkers didn't. In the end, they needed to sort of move beyond it. So. But yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, like if I had to make an argument for the progress that Firaxis added to the XCOM group would be, or to the XCOM style games would be that Gollop has now done his own sort of return to the XCOM type with Phoenix Point, and I think Phoenix Point at one point did have time units, but they've definitely adapted a system much closer to what's present in the new XCOM games. And I don't know, I think there's something to be said about simpler presentation. I think tends to work. But tell you what, I'm filibustering a little bit, so I'm going to go put the kettle on. I'll be back to play a little bit more, and then I'll just take another brief break to actually pour the water. So sorry for those of you who are bored out of your mind with the discussion on natural philosophy and old games. But we'll be back to Starflight in just a second. Okay, windstorm makes me a little nervous. So the fact that everybody's at 100% makes me wonder if time still passes while I'm in the pause menu. Oops. So actually, on the note of simple interfaces, again, I'm pleasantly surprised that Starflight is basically 4 arrow keys. I think the minimal interface for Starflight would be wow, it's been 90 minutes already. It would be the arrow keys and then spacebar. Because I know the game is very strict about saying press the spacebar for a couple of these. Huh. What are we trying to capture here? It's a 1 meter carnivore. Oop. Oh, it's trying to eat Dr. Sin. There we go. Yeah, like basically 5 keys at most. I tend to use the enter key a whole lot, and then I'll use space when I want to orbit. So the only thing I'm a little unhappy with on this particular world is we're getting a lot of animals, but the animals don't really seem to be worth that much. So I'm gonna try and get that that mineral wealth when I can. But first, we're gonna get the doctor to do some self-healing. Nope. Continuing treatment on Dr. Sin. Okay, so the usual deal here, we're going to launch and then we're gonna land again in a rockier area in order to try and get some minerals. And once we're done with that, we're gonna take a look at the star map and see what systems we can visit. I think I might do this while we're parked on a planet, so I don't need to worry about anybody messing with us. Okay, so we'll land, and this kind of seems to be the obvious choice here. Okay, kettle's boiling, so I'll let you enjoy the feast for the senses that is the approach, and I'll be back in a second. All right, sorry about that. Hazy, all right. So we got a few options here, and looks like there's a ruin as well. I think I'm going to go to the upper right for starters. Again, the original goal of this mission was to try and fill up my ship before coming back to Arth. The longer I can spend away from the star base, the more money I potentially make. Iron's not the most exciting option, but materials are materials. Okay, so we're at 77%. It's a little weird so I've kind of made more of a circular motion as far as the terrain vehicle is concerned. I haven't necessarily maximized my range, but I think I'll live with this choice, southeast for movement. So I want to be a little careful about my energy usage. I need to make sure that I can get home. Okay, so there's one more object I'd like to get. Well, potentially two, but I'm pretty sure I already have that creature. Okay, duplicate, yeah. So we'll do this for at least two more directions. And then we'll see what opportunities we have. Let's start by checking out the ruins. Okay, so there was Endurium. Cool. So I think I'll just I'll head east. We'll see how far we can go with this, and then if there's something that catches my eye, I'm not married to the one direction. Oh, okay. I now have a few things I'd like to get. Okay, so the gold's definitely very welcome. I also definitely want to check out that ruin. So we're already at 41%. Interesting. Okay, nothing in the ruin. I don't want to be too reckless with the distance. Okay, I'm definitely going to try. So this is going to get a little scary as far as my fuel usage is concerned, but I think I can pull this off. So we've got Endurium, got a small obelisk. So we apparently already know the value of that. So that gives me something to think about as far as, ooh, doing well for gold deposits. Wee green blobby. But yeah, so apparently, so my original thought was that when you would analyze artifacts, that effectively what was going to happen was the game would tell you, okay, this is, like, so basically the idea is when you'd find an artifact, there would be sort of the first bit of chance, which is, okay, like, can you find one full stop? And obviously we found a few, so yes, we've successfully found an artifact and brought it back. But then there's the assessment question, which is, okay, so having put this on the ship, like, is this thing worth it? And my original thought was that some artifacts you get can have sort of a negative value in the sense that it costs more to assess them than it, than what you what you would get for selling it. And of course, you can do trade with other species and such later on in the game, but I'm definitely not ready for that. And because I wasn't willing to pay 3 Endurium, I've now got a bunch of Velox trying to kill me. So I'm... Oh, yikes, Tree Cicero. No, no. I'm going to just adjust the treatment because... I think Dr. Sin's fine. Let's just examine. So Ariel is fine. Cheese is fine. Olaf's 92. Yep, Sin's fine. Ugh. Oh, ow. Sin just got half the health knocked down. Actually, so because I think time passes while we're sitting in the ship here, I'm actually going to take a quick second on the map and let's talk about maybe what our game plan is in terms of movement. So we are at 118, 146. I'm sure there's some way that I can do some marking. Yeah, I've got some draw options here. I think it'll probably be a bit of a pain for me to try and deal with all of this. But yeah, so 146, it's almost certainly this one. So if I wanted just proximity and different decisions I can make. Oh, actually, this is kind of interesting. So one thing I could maybe try and do, so I've got two possibilities. One, I've got the possibility where I go sort of down and to the left, which admittedly is taking me a bit further away from Arth, but we've got this system here, which I can try. It's not showing you my mouse, is it? There we go. So I could try this. We're here. I could try this system here. Now that pulls me a little further away from Arth than I would necessarily like, but I'm not like completely opposed to giving that a shot. Another alternative I could consider would be to kind of go hard coreward. So we'd go to this system instead. Now, this is also kind of interesting because if I perceive, I'm not 100% sure what these circles are, but it could be that these are borders for various empires. So if this is a Velox world and this is, another species, it may be that we wind up crossing into a border for like a group that isn't as angry at us. And that, opens some interesting possibilities. It also gives me the chance to try and go through the flux so that we can save a little bit of energy. Of course, there is also the possibility that like this is the Veloxi part and this is something else. And I'm, going to have people who are angry at me one way or the other. But either way, it would be kind of neat to try one of these fluxes. So the other question would be, what do I do about, what do I do about worlds on the way back? So for instance, do I want to make sort of side trips to these systems? Do I want to try and visit this one because it's already close to Arth? And to be honest, like I've got a few thoughts, both for and against. To a certain extent, I should probably be more open to checking out other worlds as long as I've got inventory space. So I think probably where I'm settling on this question now, I want to try the flux. So let's go hard coreward to this. I think this is like a K-class star. Then we can go down the, go down the slide. Then we, head a little bit right to these two areas, assuming that we've got the space. And then, we'll just, we'll sort of system hop on our way back to Arth. The one other alternative that I could consider, now again, that actually, to a certain extent, that seems obvious, right? The one potential that might be interesting for me is to follow up on that cloaking device lead. And that's at 6866, which in this case would be around here. Oh, no, that's really interesting. So that's apparently in the middle of a nebula. But what also makes it interesting is it's along the line, like it seems like the exit point for a flux. So there's something about like these worlds. So I'd probably want to check out these worlds. I seem to remember a reference to sort of like a cross of worlds as well. So I have a feeling there's quite a bit going on here. But okay, so this actually makes me think of a few things. One, given the fact that it mentions the Gazatroid and that they killed everyone, it's really hard to look at a recommendation like that and say, okay, well, we're definitely going to go in without any armor or shields. Like, clearly, I need to be prepared for a fight. But on top of that, because I'm apparently going to be going into some systems with lots of activity in them, I think probably a logical path to follow might be to sort of go outward and upspin, kind of slide down the chute here. You know, I can check out some, if not all of the worlds in this little area and then slide down the chute to get to the cloaking device. Basically, there's going to be quite a bit happening, and I don't know what's in these areas, and so I should, be coming prepared. And if that's what I'm going to do, then what I want to do is kind of make sure that I've got a nice big full a full hold, cargo hold, to make sure that I can sort of finance my my future exploration. And I mean, as it turns out, as we explore more worlds, we may wind up seeing other. We may wind up seeing other. Okay, interesting. So, Sin's up to vitality 100 already. So apparently, if I filibuster, I mean, I'm assuming there's consequences for me taking so much time, but. Looks like there's nobody wounded right now. Okay, I think I'm just gonna head west for this one. But yeah, I think I've got a bit of a game plan, and then if it turns out that there are other priorities that come up from exploring the worlds, then I will, I can adjust accordingly. There was also that mention of a black egg on one of the other worlds, but I need to kind of figure out what, like why I would want to do that, basically. So, bleg. It's hard to tell if that item up there are mineral. Okay, it's both life and. So I was originally going to say it's a little bit of a waste of energy to do this, but I did get 2 more units of gold, which is hard to complain about. So I'm going to try and be a little more aggressive on my energy usage here, just because the ultimate path back is. Oh, okay. So I'm just gonna scrap that for now and head back with a full tank, because we've got a ruin, some endurium, and at least 1 mineral to mess around with. But yeah, I can definitely check out the black egg as well. But I feel like that's something for me to try when I have a better idea of what the advantage to it is. Oh yeah, sorry, I was talking about artifacts. So yeah, originally I thought there was sort of this risk of going for artifacts where potentially you'd be picking up litter, and in the end you'd be out the cost of appraising it. Oh man, there's two ruins. Okay, I think I know how I'm gonna handle this. So I'm heading south first for the goodies. Okay. Kind of hard to complain about a 300 value commodity. So then we're going to head north to the ruins. So this is probably the furthest west I'm going to wind up going. So we have Endurium. we've got so this is a good example here. We've got an octagonal lens. Now, this thing may not do anything. And then on top of that, it may be that its value to sell is less than 500. And so I'd originally thought that that was just a risk that you ran with artifacts, that some artifacts are incredibly powerful and or valuable. But in order to realize that benefit, you also have to take on a certain degree of risk when it comes to, I'm just going to see if Look says anything. Yeah, well, actually, I was just going to say on the procedural note, it would have been really interesting to see these descriptions of the ruins that you run into. But, they've already put in the species names. Like, I don't know how much more work I want binary systems to do on this thing, right? But yeah, so as it turns out that you can actually find a certain type of artifact more than once, and so it is possible to still realize a profit off of the identification of somewhat worthless artifacts simply because sorry, Tree Cicero. Simply because maybe you get lucky and find more than one. I'm assuming there's the possibility that stuff that might be worthless to the humans... Jesus. Stuff that's worthless to the humans may be valuable to other aliens. That's another possibility. But we haven't done any trade yet. So I'm gonna help Tree Cicero. I'm also gonna get the leaves out. My second cup of tea is done using the same leaves, so I kind of leave them in a bit longer. Actually, if you'll forgive me, I have a quick thing I want to check on my email. I don't normally like doing that in the middle of the stream, but I forgot. Hey, lovely. Okay. Oh, very nice. I sent a friend a belated birthday message, and I wasn't specifically looking for that. I was actually looking for another possible email, but I'm very happy to report that my friend is doing well. So, someone you never really thought about and who you'll probably never think about again is doing all right. But it makes me happy that they're doing all right. So. Like I said, I don't like doing that on... Okay, clear now. Let's try going south. I think there may be still some things that we can find to the west, but I think we have better opportunities over here, so... Oh, I already see Endurium and yet another ruin. So definitely this world's doing well for goodies. Oh god, yeah, this has been really valuable for Endurium. I don't know if I want to sell any of this, but a surprising utensil. Okay, so something to the west. Gotta make sure I have enough fuel for it, but I'm feeling good. Oh, there's more than one ruin. Okay, well, we're gonna press on. I've been a little too scared to press on lately, so even more Endurium. So it's pretty clear here there's definitely a relationship between... Oh, wait, was I misreading that? I'm going to go a little bit further south because I can afford to, but I could have sworn I saw... Yeah. Pretty clear relationship between Endurium and ruins. I'm just trying to see if maybe there's other hints. This is actually one thing. I mean, again, I'm assuming for people, I don't know that much about procedural generation. This might be something that Cheese can say something more intelligent about. But it is kind of neat. Like, I do like the fact that these worlds, the ones where there are, like where there has been some kind of habitation. These are the ones. Oh God, yeah. I'm almost certainly gonna lose my terrain vehicle. I didn't realize how far away we were. Okay. But yeah, just the idea that, so we got a signal that there was some kind of a base on this world. And as we've gone through, we didn't even look at the coordinates where the base was. But what we did do was we started exploring other parts of this world. And the result of that was that we wound up seeing, sorry, what am I trying to say here? Like we went to another part of the planet and there were a whole bunch of other settlements and, some of the Endurium and so on and so forth. And what I like about this, and again, I'm sure that this is just like table stakes for people who do procedurally generated worlds, but it's nice that you have a world where, sure, you've got life on it. Yes, you've got distribution of minerals and you've got your geography and whatnot. But the fact that this world was settled, and then instead of just following the directions that the game told you of go to this location and you'll find ruins here, but rather, this was a world, like, let's just say that this was Earth, right? So maybe the base that we were looking at was, Brussels. And, we flew over to another area and what we found was basically this planet's like New York and Toronto, or Detroit, right? Like we saw a whole bunch of different ruins of, varying levels of sophistication and I mean, in the end, some of them were more intact than others, right? And, like I said, I'm sure that this is something that is just very basic for people who do this kind of generation, but it is kind of nice. Like, it's not just, with no disrespect intended to things like the generation on the alien specimens. And it's possible just because I haven't been able to interact with them that much that I'm not appreciating what all of the effort that went into generating them. Like you sort of think to a certain extent with these creatures, it's sort of hard for me to see what the difference between that and then just a series of sort of random traits, assigned to species. Like, I don't know if there's any kind of a bearing in terms of species from certain types of planets are worth a bit more. And so if you have this, or at least species that have these certain traits are worth more, and these traits appear on other planets more. And so if you find a planet with these kinds of features, you should harvest the creatures. I suspect that's probably present inside the game here, but it's not clear to me. And I think part of that's because of just my lack of interaction with the descriptions of the species. But like I said, for me, like, there's probably a lot of work that went into the generation of the different types of species, but my own experience of it isn't necessarily that different than if I had, than if it had just been a pure, random draw or like something from a list of, a bunch of pre-generated species names. On the other hand, like when I take a look at a world like this, like all of these little hills that I'm looking at, these are specifically because of where I landed on the planet and the fact that this game decided to render that. And for some reason, I just really like the idea that when you have some evidence of civilization on a world, if you start looking around, you're going to find more and more examples of this. And even if it doesn't necessarily lead you on a quest line or something, it's just kind of this nice little coherence. I think this is probably what people were talking about when they talk about it really giving this idea of being able to explore a larger universe and see, just basically see what's going on. I find that kind of exciting, and I like stuff like that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Anyways, we did say we are going to go hard coreward, so far to the right on the star map. Actually, I think if we launch and I go to the bridge, I should be able to bring up the star map. We're not in hyperspace, Captain. Okay, well, that doesn't help me. Okay, so we're detecting motion, so I kind of want to vamoose. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick second here, bring up the star map. Oh, wow, that's really interesting. This is very different from what like, there seem to be a lot more worlds here than I was expecting. So I was thinking something at about 146, 135-ish. I'm at 119, 146, 157, 98. Maybe that's it. Man, it's actually really cool they give you the fuel as well. Huh, okay. There's quite a bit more than I was expecting here. Oh, I hit escape. Sorry. Escape always causes a little bit of a pause. Okay, we'll resume. I'm definitely going to have to learn this map a little bit better, but for now I'm going to rely on the one that they gave me in the game. Man, there's just something. So I just hit enter, kind of assuming that that would get me what I needed. I really, really like the way they did the controls on this. Like I said, it's kind of hitting the... we might need to run. I is called Vampuxi and our supreme commanding captain of the greatest ship, Kisophony. Perhaps we are communicating happiness, peaceful, and not completely obliterating inferior aliens, the trespassing immediately, a responding, you're welcome. Respond. Friendly. Hello, we come in peace from the planet Arth. Receiving. The you aliens trespassing in ours the space. Most gracious grossness of august queen, perhaps forgiving if you are pay tribute of 3 Arth energy crystals right away, by Jove. Agreeing? In this case, we found like 7 in that. We're up to 79 now, so I will say yes in this case. Not trying the funny stuff, alien trespassers. Superior Veloxi, the most powerful. Statement. As representatives of the peoples of Arth, we extend our best wishes and our hope for equitable relations in the future. If you showing proper respect for distinguished Veloxi charming, then everyone is happy as bivalve mollusk. Question. Do you have any information you can share with us about your race? The best of questions and happily answering. We Veloxi is ancient in prestige. Illustrious Veloxi empire too old, the imagine. Us is civilized the most. Could you tell us about other races? We'd greatly appreciate some information. Is there anything you can tell us about other races? Other races small, important. Veloxi are number 1 importance. Other races not even knowing prophecy of egg. Barbarian, certainly. Tell us about the old empire. We are interested in information concerning the old empire. Can you help us? Veloxi is extreme delightful. The old empire was wiped up. The empire was many scoundrel, activity too naughty. Do you have any information you can share with us about the ancients? The ancients is ancestors of Veloxai. Veloxai legend is saying, Veloxai is powerful race. Ancients was powerful race. Obviously, us are relatives. The name of this game is Starflight, Izayami. And yes, this is definitely, I am growing more and more interested in this game as I continue to play it. So let's get some general info. We'd greatly appreciate some information. Is there anything you can tell us? We are long time receiving Old Empire distress call from system 17594. Of course, Veloxai could carrying less. All right. So I should start considering the bribe money part of my exploration budget. So communications have been terminated. I'm assuming they were scanning us to see what we had. But yeah, Izzy, I was talking a little bit about how some of the influences that this game, or some of the other games that this game influenced, particularly Mass Effect, but also Star Control and Dwarf Fortress, among others. And it's the analogy that I draw actually is sort of George Lucas and his fondness, almost sort of copying in the nicest possible way of a Canadian filmmaker, Arthur Lipsett, and how these kinds of influences can be sort of hiding in plain sight. Like, so George Lucas has been very open about his respect for Arthur Lipsett. I'm just going to make sure all my people are healthy. But despite the fact that he has mentioned in multiple interviews this really important influence on him, it's still largely something that is kind of news to people. And so likewise for Starflight, it's not just, so even if you think of just like, if I just take that list of, another one that you can probably consider a big influence would be No Man's Sky, because this game has got 800 worlds generated inside of it through procedural generation. I kind of like saying that No Man's Sky is sort of, if you instead of going down this path of larger and larger teams hand designing these really amazing worlds, but still, like taking the effort to sort of create the Matrix, basically. Instead, the effort sort of went into the systems that would create these very large galaxies to explore. You would wind up with No Man's Sky. Like No Man's Sky is almost the Earth 2, where the attention went in the other way. And this is definitely not an argument for saying one form is better or worse. It's just, to a certain extent, I think some of what makes No Man's Sky, and of course other indie games that are playing around with procedural generation as well, what makes them so interesting is kind of this re-examination of something that is actually old. Like the reason this tech exists, as far as I can tell, at least in the case of Starflight, is that in 1986, you just simply don't have the resources to be able to build 800. Like, let's just assume it was more than 5 people making this game, let alone the fact that these are all people who are making their first game. There's just simply not the hardware to be able to realize 800 worlds the way that maybe we would do this today, right? The way Mass Effect did it, which is to create the levels and the characters and, fill it with sounds and music. So in this case here, it's a technical problem where they are able to create able to create a system that will generate these worlds, and to be able to, so for instance, this world we're looking at right now is the mapping of the world that was generated. So there'll be a flat map that we look at, and this is an actual, the things are properly projected. And when you take a look at the various elevations, sure, they're polygons. It's not the most, exciting visual representation, but man, for 1986, 5 people, that's a pretty impressive accomplishment. One other thing I'll mention is I am playing the GOG version, so the original PC in 1986. There is a more graphically appealing version. There was a console version that was made for Genesis, released in 1991, I believe. And while as much as I would like to do it, I just don't know how I'm supposed to play the Genesis one. Like, so on stream, it would be kind of nice if I was playing something that I can say unambiguously, I own, I've paid for this thing. You can also get it on EA Origin if you don't want to get it from GOG. And I'm not 100% sure what the legitimate way of playing Starflight Genesis would be. Like, I don't want to be I'm not going to like get on a high horse about it or anything like that. But if I'm going to be spending some extended time in this game, and particularly if I'm going to be talking about its influence on games that followed, I might as well be playing the original PC one. But I figured I should just let people know. Like, if you have a way of playing the Genesis one, you may actually find it a slightly more appealing one. Yeah, so when you're talking about impressiveness, no, so like I don't really have a frame for what gaming would have been like in 1986, but seeing that fly down, like I can tell you, this is not just some static image. This is very specifically, this planet looks this way because I chose to land specifically in this area. Also, it occurs to me that I didn't actually scan the world. This could have had crushing gravity and we would have died. So we'll do that now. Fluorine, chlorine, ammonia compound, silver, mercury, and tin. So this is, we're not going to spend a lot of time mining on this world. 0.53 Gs, very thin atmosphere, temperate to searing and okay, so it's not that dangerous for us, but we're definitely not recommending it for colonization. But yeah, so this part here, I think, is interesting because it's something that you can clearly see Mass Effect was trying to capture, but in some cases they never quite managed to realize either. Oh, thunderstorm. Okay, so people are getting injured. We're gonna head back into the ship. We'll treat them, and we will. So Olaf got the worst of that. Then we'll try again in better weather. So sorry, Olaf. But like what you're going to see here, the Mako sections from the... Oh, no, don't launch. The Mako sections from Mass Effect 1, that's basically what's going on with the terrain vehicle here. The difference, of course, is that essentially the maps in Mass Effect 1 were fixed, right? It's kind of like making a very, very large base, right? So most maps, you're going to have sort of 4 walls and a bunch of cover for people to interact with. And sometimes when you're on an alien world in Mass Effect, it just sort of feels like, you're still stuck in a big square, and you just go and you pick up the stuff off the ground. The mining in Mass Effect 2 is a little bit closer to the way that it works in the Genesis version. So in the Genesis version, there is a scanner, and then you'll move over and you'll hit the mining button and you'll get the resources that way. And what interests me was, and again, my apologies to everybody who's going to watch me play this on Friday, because I know I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but what excites me so much are the number of people who are coming in saying, I've never heard of this. This looks really cool. Because that's what I thought when I first looked at this game and heard about it. So the thing that interests me is there was a Kotaku article that sort of talked about the problems that Mass Effect Andromeda had in its development, and part of that was to describe the amount of time that was spent on trying to procedurally generate worlds, because they wanted the theme of there's the theme of the game, but then there's just like one of the activities to be exploring different worlds and trying to find ones that are suitable for a new home. Now, that is something that you have to do in Starflight. That we have evidence that the star in the home system for Arth, which is not Earth. Earth is in Starflight, but it is in a different location. It's northeast. I'm an idiot. we are evaluating different worlds based on certain criteria, and we are being rewarded based on our ability to find suitable worlds for colonization. So you can definitely see how, like, based on this experience that you've seen here, the Mass Effect series never quite captured that one element in Starflight, in the sense of, like, there isn't like the full number of worlds, and that sense of exploration. Again, the Orson Scott Card quote about this game being basically gaming's Star Wars. And it's so interesting to see that, one of the ambitions really does seem to be to kind of get that one part that they didn't quite capture in terms of the source material of Starflight. And of course, the procedural generation didn't work out. And so in the end, the game was sort of left trying to put together what it could after all of that effort had been put in. But if you understand Starflight as a major influence on the game, you can see why it would be such a big deal for them to try and realize that. There's actually some things specifically about Mass Effect that I'm not talking about, because I know where this game's story goes, and it has got a hell of a plot twist. And I think it ties into the Reapers potentially. And I'm trying to keep this to myself until I get to the detail. But I may... I'm my enthusiasm may get the better of me, and I may wind up spilling the beans. But yeah, I'll admit I'm absolutely delighted. I'll admit I was really worried about streaming this, because obviously this is not, like I said, it's not a feast for the senses. It's in fact, some people have said that the audio is actually quite uncomfortable to listen to. Like, the sound of the terrain vehicle is very grating. And unfortunately, and there's no music, right? So if I'm not talking, then oh god damn it, I'm glad I had extra energy. So if I run out of fuel, I have to walk back to the ship and everybody gets damaged, but on top of that I have to pay 10,000 monetary units to get my terrain vehicle back. So it's really, really bad to run out of fuel. But yeah, no, I've been delighted, like, especially given how worried I was about about doing this game. I've been delighted at how people have been really receptive to this game. I am definitely awake late. How you doing, Star Bright Knight? It's good to see you. I really wanted to play some Starflight, so I, because I'd started something on Friday, I figured I would turn it on. As it turns out, I'm getting close to the length of a regular stream anyway, but this was just a chance for me to share something fun with people. So, and Enemy Vlor just finished a math midterm, spent a fair amount of time on it. I hope you're feeling like you did well. I know I've had to do some tests recently, and I've always really hated that waiting period after doing a test, because I always second guess like what I did. But I hope you did well, and number two, I hope you feel like you did well, because I can appreciate that the nervousness about it can be a little be a bit of a hurt. This seems like something you would have sunk hours into. Do you answer? Yeah, I mean, I'm at I think we did 7 hours on Friday. Oh God, we're in a thunderstorm. I'm going back to the ship. I should mention this is available. I know there's 2 different sites where you can get this. I'm playing a version that I got on GOG, and then this was a game published by EA. So if you use EA Origin, it's available. I think it's like a $5 or that. But I'm a member of EA Play, so I know I get like a discount. This also had a sequel. I haven't tried Starflight 2. But what I'm playing right now is available for sale, and then there was a graphical improvement for the console adaptation. So this game was also available on Sega Genesis. I don't know how you can play the Genesis one. I mean, obviously there's emulators, but I don't necessarily want to go out and advertise that, because I'm assuming there are some questions in terms of the legitimacy of how you would be playing such an emulated version, but yeah, it's a it's a very unique game, and I've been spending a lot of time talking about the influence that it sort of had on later games, and how it seems so unusual that a game that really has had a heavy influence on so many things that I've enjoyed doesn't necessarily kind of have this immediate recognition, let's say. It's funny, you absolutely love the sound of it moving. It's incredible. You feel like I'm vibrating with it. Yeah, I mean, it's this is the sort of mild drawback about streaming, right? Is that you kind of want to be conscious of the people who stop by. There's obviously plenty of people who will visit, and I think it's a wonderful thing that there's a diversity of opinions and tastes in terms of the audience. I mean, that's not something you can take for granted, right? Because people tend to like watching stuff that either they agree with or that is kind of already in their bucket. So I actually think it's really cool that a lot of you stick around, even if it's not something to your taste. But with that in mind, we've got a pretty wide range of reactions. So Izzy Amami says, sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation, by the way. It's a nice little kind of realization. It's going to be pixely, but at the very least, they chose sort of a sound to complement the concept well. But I've definitely had other people who are saying is like, I'm doing my best here with this game, but every time you move the terrain vehicle, this is really, really getting to me. And obviously it's hard to appeal to everyone. So I just, whenever somebody gives feedback like that, I want to make sure I at least acknowledge it. But clearly in my own case, I can't keep both people happy. It's incredible ASMR. Oh God. Okay. So now I know, if I want to make more of that, those YouTube dollars, I'll just do 5 hours of soothing Starflight terrain vehicle. Actually, what I really love is, for those of you, I mean, OBS is free to download, but for those of you who have some kind of audio recording software or anything that'll give you like monitors for your audio levels, when you get to the loading screen of Starflight, just take a look at the monitor, because it's just this like flat bar that goes to a certain volume level and never changes. I like the sound of it. I like actually, I get a little excited now when I hear that music start. I can't remember if I've gone, I think I went southeast. I'm going to do one more trip east just to make sure that we've seen everything. But I think we're done with this world. Aural density for the win. Yeah, I don't know. I think what I like the most about this is that I like this game not necessarily just because of sort of this retro charm. I probably sound a little more critical of classic games than I necessarily am. But I don't feel a need to sort of respect the elders. No, that's not the right way to put it. I don't feel a need to sort of worship at the altar of what came before. Like, I really like modern games, and I hope I've established enough context for my comments in terms of where I say, I don't think this thing works very well. Because, obviously I hope as much as I can when I make comments like that, like the historical context is sort of granted. So what I'm doing here, I'm getting close to the edge of my fuel. So what I'm trying to do is do as far... Oh, damn it. Okay. I'm going to do a very greedy and reckless thing. So if we run out of energy, we're toast. Well, silver, so that's valuable. So I'm going to try and focus on as much of the brown territory as I can for the fuel efficiency. And then when I can, start heading northwest. But yeah, the thing here is that I'm not just playing it because of its sort of classic or its retro status, or I'm not or my enjoyment is not just sort of, oh, look at this cute little curiosity from ye old days. I'm actually legitimately enjoying this as a game. It's doing some things that I can't really think of a lot of other I can't really think of a lot of other games that have given me some of these experiences that I'm having right now. And there's some things that I actually appreciate in terms of it being somewhat modern. So like, I'm talking about this control scheme. One thing that's a very common complaint for me on old games is how, one, I need to read the manual to understand what's going on. So it's not necessarily intuitive, but there's just so many keys that get used. Whereas in this game, it's the arrow keys and, enter and or space is all that I'm really using here. And the manual didn't need to explain that to me. It's just something sort of that I picked up. And in that sense, like, that's really things that like mobile games are very good at. So, in this case, I actually think the interface for this game is very strong. Do I think an HD version of Pong would be good? So I think there were a couple of Pong adaptations that made them like fighter games. By the way, one thing I'm a little worried about here, we're at 52% in terms of cargo, but I know so much of that is Endurium. So the question is, do I want to ditch the Endurium at the risk that the price may go up in the future? Or do I just use up more and more of my cargo space at the expense of being able to trade this stuff? Anyways, one way or the other, we got to get away from this planet. And we will... I think I was going from the innermost planet to the outermost. So pink usually means purple. This usually means a gas giant, so I shouldn't try and land on it. Okay, so we paid up for the yeah, well, it's the big question here is how quickly I start buying all the other things for my ship, because right now I've got the best engines and not the lightest, but one of the lightest configurations I can have for my ship. So the thing is that if I'm making estimates of the amount of fuel that I need to move around, I'm going to need a lot more energy to be able to move and like, it's not just that I'm going to have a heavier ship. I'm going to have a considerably heavier ship. So like lots of armor, lots of like armaments and so on. So the more Endurium that I sell, is potentially something that I'm going to get surprised by when the time comes for, for further exploration. But we're a little ways from home, so it's going to take us a while before we need to consider that. So I'll just explain. It sounds like there's a few people who haven't seen this game in here before. So I have hired and trained a science officer. So there are a few traits that are a little bit more important than the others. Actually, this is another game that I forgot to mention that was inspired by Starflight, although maybe a little less obviously. FTL than Light. FTL actually had, I think, acknowledged a little bit of inspiration from Starflight, or at the very least favorably compared the two. But in this case, I've trained up my science officer, and one of the reasons for this is that we will be paid if we identify worlds that we can colonize. So we've discovered that something external to the system is causing the star in the center of our home system to flare. So eventually it's going to blow up and we're going to, it's going to kill everyone. So we've given a couple of planets for recommendations, but essentially this is the reason why. It's a neat little twist. So if you read the manual, it gives you a certain set of conditions and sort of explains why why your mission is what it is and sort of why they're building it that specific way. But a few days into exploration, you'll actually get the news that says, okay, we're actually in some trouble, and this is why you're doing this thing. And if you don't succeed, we're going to go extinct, basically. So in this case here, we're looking, and again, this comes back to the Andromeda comparison that I was making. In this particular case, one of the reasons why I've trained up my science officer is that it can be quite lucrative to find some planets to send the world out, or alternative worlds to send people out to. So we already know that this is not going to be a suitable world because of the atmosphere. There's no oxygen in it. If we were to go mining, the platinum might be worth something, but as soon as I go to analysis, we can see that the gravity is 15.2 G. So in this case here, the traits for an ideal planet, and again, this would have been, so in the game, the manual somewhere, it says that if you try to let on a gravity greater than 8, you basically die. I've never tried it, but I'm just going to take the manual's word for that. The ideal planet has either a temperate or a tropical climate. It has gravity less than 2, ideally on the lighter side, but basically the ideal bound is 0.7 to 1.3. It has to have oxygen in the atmosphere. There has to be water. The atmospheric activity can't be any higher than moderate. So you'll notice here at the bottom where it says global weather violent, that would be another thing that that would disqualify this world. And then there's a couple of other details that will make it useful. Like that'll a couple of other details that will maybe make the planet more valuable, which is high biodensity or high mineral density. Those are here. But in this case, like the fact that it's a gas giant on its own is like, we're not going to land on it. We're not going to do anything with it. We're just going to move on. I don't know if there's any benefit to like scanning these worlds or anything like that, but mostly I just want to kind of check things out. So we will now move. Looks like there's a big gap among the worlds. So I think the white ones wind up being frozen worlds. So I would not expect much in the way of recommendations for colonies, but we're here. So let's see what we can do. Actually, there may not be any land on this. So 33 is in terms of mineral density, fluorine compounds in the atmosphere, carbon monoxide, hydrosphere, tin, chromium, and plutonium. 0.9 Gs, frozen, thin atmosphere, subarctic temperature, moderate global weather. So this my people might wind up getting damaged when we land. I am going to try landing, just because it is actually going to give me a flat. Yeah, I mean, where would I even find? Okay, we're not even going to try. There's like, so the thing is, I believe you can cross water being put sort of in the square, in the scare quotes. But it's very bad for the efficiency. And generally the way the game works is the minerals are found in the higher elevations. So in this case, like, why even try this world, right? There might be minerals here, but it's going to take me a lot of effort to try and find them. And I may not find anything. So it's easier to just move to another planet. They shouldn't all be like this. Okay, definitely not a world we would colonize. So this one is kind of interesting. So it's got a lower mineral density. I'm actually probably not going to land on this planet either, but for a couple of different reasons. So again, this game's got a pretty decent little simulation running in it. So it, like, the different levels of gravity are going to affect your fuel usage. Now, the fact of the matter is I've got a lot of fuel right now, but it is expensive. And just because I have it doesn't mean that I necessarily want to burn it. So what we saw with the lithosphere didn't really suggest that there was a lot that was valuable to us. This is one of the higher gravity numbers. So it's definitely going to be one that will cost us a lot of fuel to land on. And when we do get there, we see that the global weather is very violent. And so one consequence of that is it's like we had an electrical storm on a planet that wasn't all that violent in terms of global weather, and it basically killed a crew member almost instantly. Now, admittedly, it's an Eloan, which is a very weak kind of species. But still, like, that is one of the risks that I'm taking here. So while you can see that there's a little bit more for me to land on and work with here, I just think that the risks in terms of resource usage and the possible cost of losing a crew member is more than those resources are worth. So who froze to? Nobody froze to death. They got shocked in the electrical storm. That was Tree Cicero and Dr. Sin on like the first world we went on. Ooh, little island. Okay. I think we're probably just going to wind up leaving this one too, but we'll see what we're up against. I'm going to tell Olaf that you're abusing his very kind gift that way. Thank you very much, Night Valian. I mean, on your scale, this is new, right? Is this the Tree Cicero we have, son of Tree Cicero? See, I decided to, I couldn't bring myself to admit that Tree Cicero and Dr. Sin both died on one of the first expeditions. So what we did was they were in critical condition, and we needed to give them intensive care on Arth. And so that these are the same people. But of course, you could choose to interpret that however you want. How was your stream tonight, Night Valiant? I before I started this, I saw some kind of anime thing going on where you were. So I don't know if that was the game you were playing or if you just really like anime and started off with this. Oh, I love it when you all use those emotes. Yeah, Mami, thank you for doing that. That's the Aristotle one that Eyes of Sin did. Named after Dr. Sin is named after the same individual. Okay, so in this case here, because it's a very light gravity and no danger in terms of the global weather, sure, it's subarctic. You don't want to go for a stroll in that, but this is definitely a world where we can try and get some resources. Now, there's basically only one place to go. So there's this little island up here. And again, you can sort of see, right, that there's the mapping. Basically, if you were to, you'd probably need a little bit of time to like properly work this all out, but you would definitely be able to do the mapping from the representation here to the globe, and then you can also work that out when you come in, land in. But we won't do that. I'm just going to select the site and descend and see where it's going. So we won't spend too much time on this, but it shouldn't be that hard. So this is the highest place I can get on the world. And if there's any minerals to be found, we'll scoop them up. So the terrain, cracked plains and hills of white snow and ice. Okay, so nothing on the map that says minerals right now, but we'll still keep taking a look. So we had a pinkish area here. I just want to see what that means. Okay, that's a slightly higher elevation. So I think I'm actually going to head northwest with that in mind. So if you look in the top right, you'll see that there's energy and EFF, efficiency. So basically, the efficiency, I believe that is a combination of the terrain that I'm on as well as the weather conditions. And so I was talking about how the higher the ground, the more likely there are to be minerals. Well, you'll also notice the higher the ground, the harder it is to traverse. And so there's a higher energy cost for going in there. Now, like I said, one of the big advantages of this area was that it's relatively low to the ground. So I'm sort of able to investigate what's going on and see if there are any minerals to pick up. It's looking like there aren't, but notice like we're already 50 kilometers away and we're only just crossing the 80% mark. And if there is something on this planet, we'll see little X's where they are, but it's possible that there's just nothing for me here. Thoughts on mindless RPG grinding, as relates to this game or just in general? I mean, mindless kind of, I think it's hard to imagine someone responding to a question like that that has mindless in the description, and someone saying, "Oh yeah, I love the mindless stuff." Please give me more. I do not want the thoughts to come interrupting my day-to-day activities. But I guess so I have a weird relationship between those kinds of mechanics. In one sense, I struggle to spend a lot of time in Diablo because to a certain extent, it almost kind of feels like candy. I like candy, but like I could eat like a bag of candy and it feels really good at the time, but a few moments later, I don't necessarily feel like, all the enjoyment of it is kind of gone. And it's like, maybe I'll want more, or, if I have more, I'll feel sick. But either way, like it's not sort of a sustaining kind of enjoyment. So generally, like I'll enjoy little spurts of Diablo or something like that. But it doesn't seem to be the sort of thing that really sustains me for a long time. And yet, games with very similar mechanics have actually done a good job of getting my attention. So one game that I probably play more than people may appreciate is Division 2. Which is, I mean, to a certain extent, just a third-person Tom Clancy branded Diablo. Yeah, like it's, I think it's very fair to say mindless is definitely the word that makes it difficult for me to say, oh, I love it. I always sort of feel like my actions in a game should have some kind of purpose. So like even here, right? We just spent a bunch of time exploring a planet that didn't really give us anything, but we were doing that for a reason. And there's another version, at somewhere we look at a similar planet and we go, and maybe we find a ruin, or maybe we find some really valuable mineral. I don't think this was necessarily wasted time because we couldn't have known that there wasn't anything for it. And I mean, we haven't checked the whole planet. I just don't see a lot of value in, in running out with that again. But I know to some people would say, oh, the process of getting minerals is grindy in Starflight, which, maybe not. But I definitely kind of want to have a reason for the things that I'm doing. And I think I know what you're talking about. Like some RPGs, it just sort of feels like you have to hit your quota of goblins that you bonk on the head before you can do the stuff you really want in a game. And to a certain extent, I think sometimes that can just be a failure to establish the fantasy. Starflight, the fantasy is really clear that I'm a star, the captain of a of a ship, and we're going out into space, and we're exploring a world that hasn't been touched since the fall of the old empire. But yeah, Valiant Cheese says, I always feel like, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Valiant Cheese is a game designer. Actually, if you want to plug your itch page, you definitely can, Cheese. I'm trying to, where I can, keep my attention focused on in the game window or chat. But I actually found him through his SimCity inspired city builder Hive Time, which is a bee themed one, which has Twitch integration. And it was just occurred to me that I can't remember how many times I've played it with Twitch integration. Sorry about that. You were thinking about RuneScape fishing leveling. You've been reading about applying the same mindlessness to IRL daily things like studying, working things out, or things you don't enjoy. Well, gamification is definitely a field that, like, I in my own workplace, we actually had, I hate the idea of a hackathon, but I participated anyway. And it was very much about the idea of gamification to try and make sure that people were engaged with their work. And the fact of the matter is, right, like mobile games, there's lots of games that, not just mobile, incidentally, but there's lots of games that are very good at taking people's time. And there are some very useful results that you can get from that, right? So if you, like, I'll put it to you this way. Some people really like reading challenges, read so many books within this period of time. And I am certainly someone who would very strongly encourage people to read more. I do not think there is a point where you can hit where you're saying that you read too much. I'm just going to hit escape. I don't know if that pauses the passage of time, but we're going to need to spend a little time on the map. So, but the fact of the matter is, I also know, and I say this as someone who loves reading, it can sometimes be a bit of a drag to try and read. Like, I'm really close to finishing a book I've been really enjoying, The World... I think it's called The World, A Very Short Introduction. It's by Richard Haas, who I think is president of the Council on Foreign Relations. At the very least, he's a senior position on it, and very, very significant foreign policy credentials. I think it's a really good overview of historical context without going in too deep, and a discussion about kind of global issues, what's currently at stake, possible avenues that they can go down. I think it's something that's a really nice little supplement where if you were to, say, want to read the newspaper a little bit more often, you would be getting some very relevant context that may be missing from some articles. So I'm enjoying that book very much. I'm in the last few chapters, but I've actually been finding lately it's been, for lack of a better term, it feels like a little bit of a chore. Like I have to pick up and do my last couple of chapters, which is weird because even though I've been enjoying this book, it's largely because of the alternatives I have, right? I've got Starflight. I've got a data project to work on. I've got people to chat with. I've got angry tweets to write about whatever the big thing is. There's a lot of things that are good at drawing away my attention, and reading is something that definitely benefits from and really should require my full attention. It's something that's a bit slower. And so, with that in mind, some people really like reading challenges because that's something that will motivate them to kind of keep going and make sure that they kind of give themselves the right incentive structure to keep doing this thing that they enjoy and will enrich them. So, again, there's a darker version of this, which is, you sort of want to maximize revenues and you are adopting a set of mechanics that is not necessarily fulfilling for your players, but it does align well with your key performance indicators, KPIs. And that your revenues will ultimately increase. Obviously, I think a lot of people are justifiably quite uncomfortable with that. But, in general, I think I think games can teach us quite a bit in terms of people's attention. And with that in mind, attention is very good, and being able to direct attention towards things that are rewarding is very valuable. But of course, it's kind of up to like the end that it's being employed towards is what matters, right? Because there's a lot of things that you can do knowing about people's attention that isn't necessarily leading to a more fulfilling life. Sorry, let me just catch up with Valiant. She says, I think about Bone Sweeper a bit. For people who don't get anything out of Minesweeper, getting a skeleton has to feel like a grind, since the intended audience is people who like Minesweeper. Getting skeletons is a reward on top of that enjoyment. Maybe Zen is a better fit for what you're describing than mindlessness, although that's misusing Zen anyway, I think. What do you mean mindless? Because for a week you woke up to grind a fish 8 hours a day for a week with almost no thought. But if you make mindless positives, it would be Zen. Like the concept of flow. Okay, I get what you're talking about. Just so I can talk about the... Sorry, I always feel bad when there's a conversation happening in chat and I jump in between. I am reading this stuff, but I also want to make sure that I'm spending some time on the game too. So, is it not showing my mouse cursor again? What's going on here? There we go. So we are in this system, I believe. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to head around the 120 area. So what we're basically looking at here would be something like one... Oh, hang on. 120's here. So I would actually want 130. So let's say, 128, 143-ish. And I'm hoping we can just sort of run down the slide. Yeah. I'm just going to head to the left. Sorry, I know it has specialized terms, but... Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're at 122, 127. And I wanted to go sort of to the right for those two systems. Oh, god damn it. Okay, I'm gonna just kind of go more coreward for a little while and then south. So I'm at 125, 125. I'm actually going to hit escape again, just again, because it says there's motion detected and it's actually reasonably close to us. Okay, so we're at 125, 125. Okay, yeah, so if I head to somewhere around 130, 125 will probably be fine. Oh, sorry, I forgot to... Okay, so there's one. There should be a second one we see nearby. Okay, well, we definitely know which one was the red star. So we'll get in close. I would not expect to see a habitable world, but we may get lucky. Uh-oh. Okay, well, that's definitely not the space police. Receiving respond. This is Captain S.O. Ariella of the starship ISS This Thing On. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. Receiving 92. Yes. Permission to orbit denied. Communications have been terminated. Ah! Oh God, get me out of here. No, we're gonna die. We're almost certainly gonna die. Okay, let's repair. I don't see us getting out of this. Hull destroyed. Game over. Oh, what a shame. Oh wow, that just kicked me to desktop. Oh Jesus, this game is merciless on your status. Yeah. So I mean, in fairness, right? Like this was definitely I made a choice in terms of my I definitely made a choice in terms of going in kind of naked. Um, my only complaint about the way that the combat works, like because everything's real time and because the way that you will issue orders is through that window. Like obviously, if I could have just immediately gone to, if I could have immediately gone to maneuver, I would have been in a little bit of a better state. But but yeah, I mean, it definitely the game gives you a couple of warnings of certain areas that you should avoid, but it's really clear here um, that this it this is definitely a place I need to second guess. The only thing I'm disappointed by was we made so much progress in terms of getting those class 5 engines. Um, and obviously for me to to get back to that state, I'm going to need to spend a lot of time mining. So, but yeah, I do need to feel bad. I think this will probably be a good time to wrap up the stream because it's actually quite late for me. And so I'm sorry to kind of wrap up this game on this ignominious defeat. But let me put it to you this way. So now that you know, so what the one thing I am happy about is that so far as I can tell in the PC version of this game, if you close the window without properly saving, you'll get like an error that says like game in progress or game in progress, and it'll like close it out. Like I think so far as I can tell, it is actually kind of easy to screw up your save and make it so that you can't go back to the game. And of course now you've seen even if that doesn't happen, there are some situations you can wind up in where you just get clobbered. So knowing that there can be some pretty unforgiving losses, um, I've also been surprised at the number of people who have, people who have been like interested in this game. So it's a little bit loaded to ask a group of people who are here just for Starflight anyway. But is this something you'd like to see a little bit more of? Because I actually don't mind adding this to a regular rotation of games to play with. And so if now that you know that there will be potentially some some hard endings and very sudden ones. If people don't feel too cheated on that, I'm willing to sort of get back on that horse and run again. What I might do is spend a little bit of time in the opening stages for myself to see if maybe I can make a little bit more progress and then pick up to a similar place where we were before at the start of this stream and move on. Okay. The other thing I'll say, so I'm going to leave this for people's taste. I'll find somebody to host in the meantime, but I was talking a little bit about the story and the big twist. So there's two ways that we can do this. We can hope that over the course of time, I make some good progress in terms of the Starflight story, and you get to see the big twist when we hit that moment. But I also think it is a reasonably good twist, and there's a lot to do inside of the game that it won't be too bad to share it with you. So don't worry. If I start talking about this, I'm going to give people a very clear warning ahead of time. But would anyone like to hear sort of the arc of the story that really like I just think is super cool and made me like, okay, I gotta play this game. And maybe the other way, would you, are there some people who'd say it's like, no, if I am going to learn this, I want to learn it in the context of someone playing the game and arriving at that moment, because it is actually very close to the end. So you would like to hear the audio drama adaptation? Okay. Um, so how about I put it this way? I'm going to look it up. I think the Wikipedia does a decent summary of the overall plot. So I'll read that bit here. While I'm looking that up, maybe let me ask, is there anyone here who would not like, who specifically does not want to hear this at the moment? I'll still probably say like what the, give it a couple minutes. I would like to host someone, and, if we can have people around to do that host, that would be better. But this is maybe just the time to mention, is anybody here specifically not want to hear this? And I'm just going to take a quick second to read. Da, da, da. Don't give the twist. Okay. Thing is, I've actually told this on stream before one time as well. Well, what I'm going to recommend here at Enemy of Lore, because it sounds like there's at least two other people who do. What I'm going to say is maybe we can you can mute the stream for a couple of minutes, and then we can come back for the host. It's not going to take that long, but I wanted to give people a chance to say, I don't want to hear this. And then what I can do is I can say, it's like, okay, I'm going to start talking about the story things that you may not want to hear, and then we can move on. So what I'll say here at this moment, I'm going to type it in chat to say, this is the time to mute. Let's give it a few minutes. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just type it in chat to mute, and then unmute, and then we can talk. So this is the time. If you can hear this, you should mute, and then I'm going to write the same in chat, and then we can talk about the story. So okay. So those of you who were watching on Friday will know that there are messages that Interstell gives us. So it starts off with, we have discovered that, the old empire is true. And we saw this artifact on a world, very 2001 sort of. We discovered the artifact, the Noah 2 arc. And that is what allowed for the faster than light travel. And then there's also the revelation that actually we're not the first batch of captains, that there was an earlier batch of captains. And the way the story gets told is very much along those lines, right? So then we got information. It's like, okay, we got to let you know that the sun is going to flare and we need to find another place to live. And that is the reason you're doing that. And the cost of Endurium goes up, and so on and so forth. So as the story keeps going, you get to learn a little bit more and more about what's actually happening and why these certain things are going on. Now, I'm not 100% sure of what the full details are, but the old empire was running into a similar problem. There was something that was causing sort of this great migration of aliens to run through. And I think the suggestion is that this is the set of events that led the old empire to collapse. And they sent a human, Commander McConnell, to end the crisis, which was this thing called the Crystal Planet. And there is no no indication why, but it's known that Commander McConnell failed in his mission to stop the Crystal Planet. It is also revealed that the Crystal Planet is in fact the thing that's moving from system to system, causing the suns to flare. And so eventually Starflight lets you sort of take on the mantle of Commander McConnell to end the Crystal Planet. So there is a moment where you actually land on the Crystal Planet to destroy it. And you find the final record from Commander McConnell. You find his last journal entry. And what I will do is I'll read the final paragraph of the Wikipedia description of the story. The player must explore solar systems, gather clues, and find special artifacts that grant access to the Crystal Planet, ultimately destroying it before the player's home system flares. Commander McConnell's last journal entry can be found on the surface of the Crystal Planet. He shares his discovery that Endurium is actually a race of living, sentient beings who are being burned up as fuel for interstellar travel. Because their metabolism is extremely slow due to their crystalline makeup, they are not even aware of outside life and have come to view other races as a virus. And the game is over when you blow up the Crystal Planet and it retreats it back into space. But yeah, so Endurium, that thing that we're picking up and trying to mine, yeah, so that is that is a hell of a twist. And my view, so I don't know if this is true, but that whole story of like in Mass Effect, where the Reapers wind up sort of allowing sort of civilization to flourish for a while, and then coming in and harvesting everything except the small kernel. There's a side of me that really believes that to a certain extent, the story of Mass Effect is kind of the story from the perspective of Endurium, right? This resource that exists to be consumed by a much larger and malevolent force that you can never really properly understand. But like I remember reading the detail of like seeing the final journal, and the revelation is like Endurium is a living race and the Crystal Planet is their defense mechanism. I was like, oh my god! So I have never actually got to that moment myself. I actually still think that is such a good twist. I want to know all the steps that lead up to it. But like obviously knowing that is where this is all going, like that is one of the reasons I was so excited to try this. So with that in mind, I'm gonna say that unmuting is good now. So but yeah, so the only reason why I wanted to talk about that was it is very likely that it's going to take me a long time to be able to even remotely get close to that sort of stuff. So for the people who wanted to get the excitement, I wanted to be able to share that. And, you know, for me, my enthusiasm is only enhanced by knowing that. But I want to give people the option to see the stuff as it moves by. But I'm delighted to see some of the responses to that. Now, on the retro theme, Kilgore Trout is still streaming tonight, so he's doing the Elder Scrolls Arena, and I think he is a very good and safe choice for people on a Starflight night. I'm going to need to get some rest. I will still be streaming tomorrow, so we'll probably do maybe the last entry of will probably be the last entry of the Stellaris playthrough tomorrow. I don't have a lot of optimism for our ability to win the session, but we're going to do our best. Wednesday, we're probably going to be back to Phantom Brigade. I think we've got one more week before Industries of Titan gets another update. And then Friday, we might do Starflight. I might go back to Hand of Fate 2, or we might be, we might be trying something new. I do like the fact that I have a little bit of flexibility. And obviously in the case of Starflight, I feel like I kind of caught on to something that I really wasn't sure if everybody would enjoy it, but I'm delighted that you have. So If you want to see this a little bit more regular, just you can let me know. But for now, I definitely consider this one of the viable options in my armory, and hopefully I can get through some of the stuff that's on my plate, so we can dedicate some proper time to those games. Have a lovely evening or afternoon, because it's a worldwide audience. I hope you enjoy Kilgore's stream, and we'll see you in the next one.